And I happened to have a heart attack because I had a pretty challenging and stressful life. And I happened to have a heart attack at the age of 35. They are really high risk. And those are the people that are going to cost them a lot of money long term. So I met my cardiologist. I said, hello, I'm here to take my blood pressure. And he said, no, I have an idea. So I think it is definitely a marathon. It'll be years before doctors accept this. They don't have to go to a hospital and they can do it from their home. It's not impossible to do this test. I mean, just taking genomics, we are now able to access the data of life, and we have the tools to analyze them. We have experts on that. This needs to be a global project. Now it's up to you.
Hey everyone, on today's show, I will be interviewing the co-founder of MultiplAI, Mark Ramondt. Mark, welcome to the show. Tell us about MultiplAI. How did you all start?
Thank you very much, Simac. My background is very international. I was born to Dutch diplomats in Mexico, lived in many different countries as a young man, then joined Unilever about 25, 30 years ago, was with Unilever and other multinationals for about 20 years in total. And really the story of MultiplAI is something that has grown over the past 17, 18 years by connecting the dots. So the first dot was meeting my wife, who is Argentine, who is responsible for my now living in Buenos Aires and London at the same time, which is a challenge. We can get into that later. So that was the first part, Argentine wife. So the second one was I had a pretty challenging and stressful life living in New York working for Unilever. I was CFO of the North American Home Care Division, and I happened to have a heart attack at the age of 35. That was a big surprise in my life. I had just met my wife. She still decided to marry me, so that's the good thing. And so, yeah, I've had a cardiologist for the last 20 years. That's the second dot. And the third dot happened when we moved to Argentina after having our first daughter in the Netherlands already 17 years ago. And I met my cardiologist, a guy named Dr. Santiago Miriuca. And then for the last 10 years, I've been starting startups. I've been investing in startups, advising companies, doing board roles. The main thing has been helping to start and develop the ecosystem of startups in Latin America mainly. And the latest one, MultiplAI, and said, hello, I'm here to take my blood pressure. And he said, no, I have an idea. And so we started talking about MultiplAI, and the rest is a bit history. So that's the third dot, my cardiologist here in Argentina, without whom I would not have this project.
Okay, and what does MultiplAI do?
MultiplAI is a liquid biopsy. It's a blood test to detect cardiovascular conditions. So starting with coronary calcium, fatty liver, and other cardiometabolic conditions, including hopefully soon diabetes.
Great, okay. And where are you in the life cycle of this whole development of this product?
We've been going for about 5 years. We started in 2019. Started the company in London, in the UK, in large part because of the NHS and this thought process of population-wide products should happen in population-wide systems. You then find out that it's quite difficult to sell into the NHS. It's not the problem, isn't the NHS, it's just the size of the beast. And so for the last 2 years, we've been very focused on launching our initial products in the US. And that's where we are, working on CLIA validation to be able to sell our test under the LDT, the Laboratory Developed Test framework in the US. I'm very excited about finally commercializing after 5 years, after running around 6 clinical studies to develop data that we have for our results. Just had a paper published in the European Heart Journal, which is great. That was our first peer-reviewed paper, and we've had our first patent approved just this month. So good moment in life.
Congratulations on the patent here. So that's great. And what's the kind of USP of this particular product offering?
Okay, so what we talk about is universal genomic screening. So it's about making the future of healthcare, which is access to biological data at the molecular level, accessible to everyone. So we talk about being universally accessible. It's only a blood test, so you can literally take it from your home, you can take it from anywhere. The comparable test to test for coronary calcium is a CT scan, for which you have to go to a hospital. So there's the accessibility there. Today, the cost of genomic sequencing is still quite high, in the hundreds of dollars per sample.
Yeah.
There's no doubt that it will come down. The question is how quickly it comes down. But that'll be the second factor, affordability. And the fact of the matter is this is also great for people living in rural and less served communities in the UK, but also all over the developing world, where people just aren't close to clinics and don't get regular healthcare. So this is a great way to monitor that. And then there's a sustainability aspect to all of this. If we're going to have a test that sells millions of tests a year, you want it to be highly sustainable. Illumina
Yes.
is considered a sustainable company. We use mostly their technology for the sequencing, and that's the USP. It's all about being more accessible than the existing things, and then above all, it's more accurate. So it's a very interesting product also for any kind of risk-bearing entity, so insurance, others that are very interested in understanding the risks around their patients, and especially people that are at risk of chronic disease, because that's where they spend a lot of money.
Got it. So you have the level of accuracy, which is much higher than a scan, if I've got it correctly. How accurate is that?
The baseline is really what considered a current clinical practice. So you go to the doctor, they ask you about your history.
Yes.
Today, they may send you to some more testing, but generally speaking, it's cholesterol, blood pressure, stress levels, age, weight, and that kind of thing. That gives a doctor around a 60 to 65% accuracy on finding people that have a heart problem. Our tests run into the 90%, so 90-95%. It's about 30 to 35% better than the current practice.
Got it. And also from what you're saying is the cost of it. Do you have some kind of benchmarks on?
The cost of going to a doctor and testing for this lipids is quite low, about $100 to $150. But the fact of the matter is 75% of people on earth don't do it because it is about going to a doctor. It's about having a doctor. It's about having time for a doctor. The real vision here is if you're talking about just a blood test and eventually it'll be drops of blood, don't go too far down the Theranos route because I think they were just 15 to 20 years early. But it will be a really simple test to do. And our test has been set up very much to be simple. So we don't do any kind of difficult laboratory work in the preparation of the samples. And all of that is aimed at being able to do this in the most precarious or simple remote conditions where you just need to get a bit of blood into a vial where it stays in good condition for at least 48 hours at room temperature. So that's the real thing. The affordability is one thing, but just getting it into people's hands and having them get tested for chronic diseases that they could just be avoided.
Yes. Just talk to me about the kind of journey of the life cycle of, so if you have a particular patient who wants to do this test, they have it in their hand. Do they need to be at a clinic or do they ship it? Can you just walk us through what that journey looks like?
The journey is under development, but really simply, there's a great quote from Bishop Desmond Tutu, which is, it's time to stop pulling people out the river and find out why they're falling in the first place, right? So what we believe in is preventative medicine, and the answer is early detection. And so we're looking for is when they get born, they have a genetic test using DNA. It's a static biomarker, and it's a very useful one for hereditary conditions.
Right.
We use the sister molecule RNA, and the interesting thing about RNA is that it detects environmental factors in addition to the genetic factors, and that's very important for cardiovascular disease and other diseases that rely or are impacted more by environmental factors. So while around 20% of cardiovascular disease is caused by hereditary factors, most of it is your lifestyle, and we're able to detect that in a much more robust way. So the interesting thing going forward is really just being able to know that you are sick, and the real change will come in the relationship that a doctor has with the patient. Today, the doctor is very unsure about the condition of the patient. Like I just said before, only about 60 to 65% certainty that the person has a problem. So it's very difficult to be the doctor. We're giving them more accuracy and more data so that they can improve the treatment of their patients. It really starts with the first diagnosis and knowing that that patient is ill. Today, many doctors don't know that their patients are ill. The first symptom that people have of a heart attack, in 30% of the cases, it's death. The first symptom is death. We want to avoid that symptom.
So Mark, in terms of getting it into a massive rollout phase or into, let's say, productionized, where do you see this particular journey of MultiplAI now?
I think it is definitely a marathon. It'll be years before doctors massively accept this. I already mentioned with the NHS, we certainly haven't given up, but it'll take another 3 to 5 years. So the first step is to prove the concept and to start learning about this space in something called concierge medicine in the United States. It's basically private insurance.
Right.
Gives people money to spend on these kinds of tests. It's not a massive market, but it's a great way to learn about our product. other part we're very excited is insurance, and it's
Yes.
more the life insurance side of things, or the part of long-term care where people are diagnosed with a condition and then go on treatment for the rest of their lives and they live for 40, 50 years. Those are
Yes.
the people that these insurers want to identify, and our test is extremely good at telling people what risk they have. So the insurers, it's a perfect use case, and we're working to develop a business case.
Okay, great. Okay. And just going to go back to the start when you said you were joining the dots, right? Who was actually the main kind of influence into getting this into MultiplAI? And what's the AI element also on that? Because, MultiplAI is spelled with AI at the end. So
AI is at the core of everything. So what we do is we take the blood sample, we sequence it. So that's the digitalization of biological sample. We do a very deep sequence, over 100 million reads, with the idea of being able to see less frequently expressed genes. What we do is we sequence all of the RNA in the blood. So there's many different types: coding, non-coding, circular RNAs, and we don't distinguish between RNAs. So we literally extract all of the possible information that's there, and then we use bioinformatics to transform that data into an image. What we have found is that the image that we've created is really, really suited for algorithmic analysis by, off-the-shelf algorithms that will see the difference between a dog and a cat.
Right.
We've trained about 800 different algorithms, and that's what IP is really. Beyond the patent, it's also just about how to get the results out of the data.
Okay. How quickly can one get the results out of the data once you get the vial of blood?
Today the turnaround time is probably at best around 2 weeks. It needs to get much lower than that. I believe that within the next 5 to 10 years, it'll be 15 minutes, with the technology the way it's going. But for now, one sample takes roughly 6 hours to sequence. It's a slow process. It will get down to minutes in the next years as compute improves, as the algorithms improve, as the bioinformatics improve, etc.
Amazing. So 15 minutes. Okay. And in terms of obviously one of the use cases, a business case you mentioned was insurance, right? If you look at that as the use case, as one of your use cases, right? What kind of benefits are we looking at both from the insurer as well as from the patient side out there?
So let's start with the insurer. So we're talking about the risk-bearing entity. So they are able to identify about 30% of people that they consider as high risk with their regular actuarial process are reclassified as low risk. That's really important because they're able to then issue policies more competitively than their competitors because they have identified lower risk than their competitors. And those are the people that are high risk. It's going to cost them a lot of money long term. It's going to stay. So we're able to vastly improve their prediction of the future of these patients. And then on the patient side, they don't have to go to a hospital to get a CT scan in case that's required. The turnaround time is a lot quicker and they can do it from their home. So for any patients that are far away from clinics, not in large urban centers, it becomes a difference between doing a test and not doing a test, or getting insurance and not getting insurance.
I love it. Yes. I think on the health services, you can imagine the cost, right? And drastically going down, some more money out there, right? To do some other thing.
Yeah, cost element today is very related to volume. If you sample 10 samples, it costs you about $1,000 a sample. If you do 100, it drops to around 300. It doesn't drop to below 100 for 1,000 yet, but that's just a question of time. The way it works is in batches. So think about each batch. Let's say it costs roughly the same in terms of the inputs and the time. What's different is the number of samples that get processed at a time. So you just divide by a larger number and get to much more competitive cost.
Okay. Well, those are exciting times out there. And when we look at the overall thing, you have the kind of countries, then you have also the other countries which are still developing out there. Where is your kind of gut feel in the go-to market initially to gain the traction and then move it forward to another geography? Have you thought about it, or that's still up in the air?
No, it's a great question. And yes, we've thought about it a lot. I think from day one, we wanted this to be an international company. So we set it up in the UK. We have entities in US and in Argentina. We have people in Spain. I think we've had that view because this needs to be a global project from day one.
I was talking about the go-to market, right? Whether you put it into developing countries first or the developed countries.
Wanted it to be global. We started it in the UK because of the NHS. We're starting in the US because of the out-of-pocket market. This is a product that still costs about $300 or $400 a test. So And that's just the cost. And if you're selling it, it costs more than that. So it's prohibitively expensive for most people in developing world, but that's relative. There's a lot of very wealthy people in India, very wealthy people in China, very wealthy people in Argentina and in Mexico. It's not impossible to do this test. There's limited infrastructure in terms of the sequencing technology that is limited in developing world. But the way I see this is the next 3 to 5 years will likely be adoption in the developing world, like most genomic technologies. But the vision is very much to get this scaled up to actually offer healthcare to the 75% of the world that doesn't have it today, because they don't live in the developed world with lots of great healthcare.
So Mark, in this particular space, how do you see the industry actually evolving in the next few years? I mean, this is a massive, right, with AI, with everything that you're doing, the time to get the results. And
the answer is it's going to accelerate, and I think we're all going to be very surprised by the results that these technologies. I think we're just at this inflection point of these exponential technologies having their impact. I mean, just taking genomics as one space, we are now able to access data of life, and we have the tools to analyze them. For the first time in human history, we have that access of really understanding life. That's really exciting, and is going to transform the way these industries work. The health industry, the insurance industry, the care industry. The trends are, as you mentioned before, that people are trying to take health into their own hands more. The future for me is an intersection of the omics, of the different biomarkers that you can get, whether that's a wearable, so your iPhone or your iWatch or your Garmin tracker. All of these things will give data. And then there's the genomic data. So all of your movement tracking and nutritional information and microbiome analysis. I believe that the future will be all of the above. Doctors love having many biomarkers. But what will happen is that the data will be analyzed, and just like we have large language models in text, we will start to have large language models in genomics that help these models diagnose quicker, better, and increasingly more different pathologies. And there's the other part of MultiplAI, which is really interesting, is that it is multiple pathologies. So it just depends on us being able to train the algorithm with samples that are marked so that you can tell the difference between a sick and a non-sick sample. The incredible thing about these technologies is the breadth of application.
I mean, also you mentioned going from 6 days to maybe 3 hours. That's purely on the computational power of the infrastructure you're using, or is there other aspects to it also?
There are many aspects to it. I mentioned before that we do very deep sequencing. That's the amount of data you gather. Many of the predictions can be done with less data, and that's just a bioinformatics optimization point, right? If you can get an answer with only 20 million reads or 20 million data points instead of 100 million data points, that's fine, and you should use that, and the cost comes down, the time comes down, everything comes down. So I think we are on day one of this genomic journey. Okay, it's been 20 years, but it's 20 years of development that has now gotten us to a point where it is really economically available, even for people in the development.
And I think one of the biggest thoughts or fears that comes to people's mind is data security or data privacy when they add. What's kind of your view on that, and how do you all manage that?
So I think there's two things. There's data security, and then there's explainability, which are two kind of consumer worries. Data security, absolutely in agreement with, and there's kind of two sides of that. One is making sure that your cybersecurity is in order. We have experts on that and have taken that very seriously. It starts with just using robust platforms like AWS, and it's pretty rock solid from that point of view. So that part, we have cybersecurity policy internally about how to use your computer, what data gets collected. We have patient consent forms. All of those processes are well managed. And the other part of this data that I think is really interesting is giving people their own health data to be able to manage it themselves. And that is all about tokenization and the use of blockchain. So we have a big project that is really looking into that. We've been working with potential partners. There's a company called Secretarium in the UK that is working on exactly this tokenization of health data so that it can be shared much more freely, but much more in control of the actual
Got it.
patient
Okay.
themselves.
That's good news. Let's come back to, you said you've started multiple startups out there. What's been the kind of characteristics that one needs to have to do that? Just talk to us about those two things.
I think you just have to want to suffer. I'm not aligned at all with Elon Musk on many things, but I am entirely aligned with him when he says that the CEO's job in a startup is like chewing glass. You have to do all the bad things and very little time to do the things that you want to do. I think you have to be a bit crazy. I never really fit into corporate life, but I think it was an amazing university. And what I worry about in today's world is not having enough people that are really well trained. Beyond university, I think what many corporate jobs gave the world is a lot of very, very well trained people. And startups are not as good at doing that. You learn by doing, but there's good processes like Agile and Lean Startup and all of those things to help. But the formative years of doing jobs where you see how they interact and figuring out how to, famous cog in a wheel term, it's not necessarily a bad thing. And I think one of the things we need to think about in how to manage our companies going forward is to make sure that we have ways of really training people across different jobs. You used to work for one company for 20 years.
Correct.
That company took care of your training. Now it's up to you as an individual. And that's great for some people that are good at it. It's really bad for the vast majority of people that don't know.
Got it. And so what are the characteristics an entrepreneur needs to have?
I think it's a passion about wanting to solve problems. The difficulty with entrepreneurship for me is the ups and downs. And there's a lot more downs. So that it's like on average, it's like any other life, but you have a few very, very high points that make it all worth it. And most of the time is doing a lot of rowing upstream. It is about perseverance and above all adaptability. I think opportunity comes to those that are able to take the opportunity. So one clear example in corporate life that I always said to people, be flexible. Take any job that is better than the one you have today that gets you going. Doesn't matter where. It's about flexibility. And the last one is just being really curious and not wanting to have the security of life. It sounds really easy, but the fact of the matter is only about 5% of the world is entrepreneurial. I think the future is all about entrepreneurship, because the corporate model of long-term planning and large organizations are not flexible enough. So we better get used to it. There's going to be a massive human change.
Yeah, I think we're already seeing it with the new generation, right? And they all kind of want to do a business or startup and multiple businesses alongside each other. Gig economy is there. So Dr. Me, when it comes to a startup, let's say you have the founder, the entrepreneur, he wants to bootstrap it, but if he wants to go in for funding, going to an investor, what kind of mindset he needs to have and what kind of approach he needs to have for his kind of new product, new service?
The first one is realizing you need a team. So if you are a founder, finding a co-founder. I believe wholeheartedly that single founder companies are difficult to get invested in. Most investors will look at it as a high risk, not just because if something happens to them, then it's all done, but 2 or 3 tend to persist better than just one. So I think it's really important to find that support. I would also say building a team, not necessarily with your best friends, because they tend to think the same, do the same. What you're actually looking for is, I need the finance guy, or I need the marketing guy, or I need the programmer, or I need the legal expert. I think that is the most important part of starting a company. The rest comes down to a little luck, perseverance, being able to explain what you do. There's so many good tools out there to tell you how to do that. The hardest part is getting the people together to do it. Now, having an idea is easy. Executing it is what makes it valuable.
Is it that you also work with the university?
I taught a course at the University of Buenos Aires, a postgraduate course called Innovation and Entrepreneurship, which is really interesting. I have a chance to talk about open innovation, which is the corporate version of entrepreneurship, right? How they work with partners and entrepreneurs. And I did a lot of that at Unilever. The main thing we do in the course is develop projects into the final is presenting your startup idea to investors. The scores depend on whether you get invested or not. I think that is a great way to teach people what it takes turn an idea into a sellable concept.
And when it comes to team selection, how does one go about, selecting kind of high-performing teams or high-productive teams for a startup or any business? How have you done it? Maybe your experience can be leveraged out here.
There's the general concept of hire slow,
Correct.
fire fast, right? So it is so important. Just a few suggestions. One is, I developed a long time ago a term sheet for founders. Every time I started a project, we would sit down and just go through this document. We wouldn't necessarily even sign it, but it's like before you get married, it'd be great to talk about whether you want children, whether you want a house, how you want to discipline your children,
Yep.
do you want pets, etc. With founders, it's what are our roles? What happens if somebody wants to leave? What happens if we get offered 50 million? Do we sell? Or do we wait till 100 million or 100 billion? All of those questions avoid problems 2 or 3 years in when things are tough, when somebody is tired and you need to keep going. And unfortunately, fortunately, the value of the company is still at that
Yep.
stage very much in the team. So if that team falls apart, you lose value in the company. And that is something that most people don't think about when they start the company. The company isn't just getting a product into the market. It's actually the way you get it there. And you need to find a diverse group
Yes.
that is not like you. So finding gaps in your capabilities to get there and be really honest about what those gaps are. And then the other one is look for help outside to find the way. So also on hiring, all of our senior hires are interviewed by our advisory
Right.
board members. We've been lucky to have really good postdocs and bioinformaticians working at the lab that we then hire. So you already know them, they already know you, they love how you work, and it's a very interesting and nice transition. I would love to be able to set up that kind of workforce funnel for all my projects.
Yeah, it is very difficult. I can imagine. And similar, another question right out here is, how does an entrepreneur, let's start off with yourself, how do you stay ahead of, all the market disruptions and evolving needs that come along? You don't?
You don't. The first answer is let FOMO be FOMO. Fear of missing out. Advances in AI. There's no way to stay up.
Correct.
Not even if you are the best user of ChatGPT can you keep up with all of the stuff that's going on. So accept that you can't keep up with it. I think we are still 1% of the global population that is even thinking about these things. So just relax, enjoy the ride. Don't stick your head in the ground. I think there is no doubt this is going to be a massive disruption in every way. And I'm finding it in our teams. I'm finding it in my own life. There's a lot of jobs that people are doing that are no longer getting paid. And it's going to be a really difficult time. And in that sense, I think the other thing that we can do as companies and leaders is show empathy, not just in the company and not taking care of people, but it's finding the right investors. So that empathy goes around, and I think it can lead to customers as well. I think we need to start working in a more collective-minded, empathetic way. I think it's
Indeed, empathy is key, isn't it? Talk to me as an entrepreneur. What do you wish more entrepreneurs knew about scaling a business?
That it's really hard. It's a marathon. It doesn't happen overnight. One of the hardest decisions as a CEO or as a CFO or whatever as a founder of a company is how fast to go. It's really tempting when you raise $5 million to start spending it and build the team and be very clear on your strategy so that you can take quick decisions to take advantage of opportunities, as I said before. But move smartly. Don't overinvest. Don't overstretch. But do be bold. Do expand geographically and beat the competition at stuff that they won't do because they're not bold enough. I've had many companies now, and many of them run out of money. So I know everything. The pacing piece is really important, and I wish I had known more of that.
And
earlier.
what was one of the bold, unconventional decisions you made that kind of backfired, and some lessons you've learned from that?
I think the most obvious is the transaction that we went through last year to go public through a de-SPAC, a special purpose acquisition company, onto the NASDAQ. That fell through. I'm not sure if it was a bold decision, but it was an exciting decision to go down the path of going into an IPO. It's a hell of a lot of work. It's very, very costly, and it ended up not working out for us. So it was a very painful thing for us. But there's no doubt in my mind that we were likely bit too early for that kind of play. And it was not an easy decision and not one that we took lightly, but if I look back now, it was probably not the right decision.
That's your biggest...
So I don't believe in regretting decisions. It was the only decision I could take because the other option was to shut down. So the other adage that I love is every day that you don't shut down the company is another day on the way to success. That is my motto.
Yes, no, makes sense. Yeah, I think the only time you also the other one which I like is that the only time you fail is when you decide to quit. Right. Let's say if you lost it all tomorrow, what would you do first?
Give my wife and my 2 daughters a big hug.
That's... Yeah, I get that.
And my dog. And don't forget my dog. My dog would also get a big hug.
And what do you want to be remembered for, Mark?
That is such an interesting question because I don't think about getting remembered. I believe that we will be forgotten very soon after our deaths. Love to be missed. And if I'm remembered for something, it's that. It's helping people to achieve their potential and being there when they need the support.
And the last question, what kind of support systems you enjoy around yourself?
I believe in mentoring, so I do a lot of self-help there. Family is critical, but also really helpful to have a peer that has nothing to do with your business that you can talk to about what to do. I believe in asking for help. Don't try to do things alone. Forget ego. Egos are completely worthless and useless. Just ask for help. Get people to help. Empower people to help you. And have a collective mindset driven by empathy. That's the secret.
Very good. Mark, thank you so much for being on this show.
Thank you. Have a great day.